Morning, Amanda. Why are you
morning,
laughing?
Peter. Just laughing at your clap.
Laughing at my clap. Finally, we did this
Finally.
after threatening to do it for a long time. And Jamie, oh my God, finally we get you on the podcast.
I know. I'm so excited to be here.
First time ever.
It's very wonderful.
Thank you.
In person.
In person.
Even better.
Even better. It's good to get you both on. Talk a bit about mining. Hopefully you're going to educate me a little bit about what's going on. Okay. I want to start by talking about how mining has become something big and weird and amazing and totally beyond anything I think Satoshi predicted. Mm-hmm. Mining originally was there to secure the blockchain. You could do it on your... It is, but to do it on your computer. Yeah, but it's become this whole big other thing now, which is being debated across the world in terms of energy, but it's being talked about as stabilizing the energy grid. How do you take it all in, like where mining has kind of got to?
So I started in mining in 2017. It's like when I was the class of 2017. And I started at Fidelity, obviously, and I dove into mining because no one was really paying attention to it. And it was really the foundation of the network, and I was shocked that no one cared about it as much as they should have. And I could have never predicted the rise of what happened over the past 4 years. So now we have, people talking about mining every day. We saw a shift happen, I think, after the last halving. Like in 2020, people started to talk about mining up into the halving. And I thought it was kind of like just a trend, but then it never really stopped. And now it's getting even more intensified. And I think that that's because of like the rise of public mining companies and just the rise of hash rate and how important it is for the network. So I'm excited to see it come along.
Yeah, it's funny because Canada really played aggressively in 2017. We had a lot of companies go public as mining companies in Canada, more so than in the US in that cycle. So it's fascinating to see the rise of miners in the US now in this cycle, and really just how much is happening in the North American space at a rate that we absolutely couldn't have predicted.
What's it been like for you, Jamie, coming in about a year ago? You
my
just told me?
1 year anniversary was last week. So it's been fascinating. Obviously, I come from the traditional technology space and data center space, but at the end of the day, it's all very, very similar as far as the motions of how we run our mining farms and how server farms are run. It's different outputs. It's, a different end use case, but ultimately it's server farms that we're running.
It was really funny when Jamie first started, we had a conversation and she called me and was like, is this really like how you order ASICs? Is this legit? I was like, welcome to the circus, Jamie. Things get really weird in mining.
I couldn't believe that first contract. I've never signed worse terms in my 22-year career. I couldn't believe it. And that's why I called Amanda. And luckily, Amanda's been a friend to me since I got into the industry. And you need to have somebody to call to be like, am I getting completely hosed or is this real? Because it's wild.
What were the weird terms? Is it like
we
charge you what we want, when we want, and deliver them when we want?
And you pay up front. So you transfer, in our case, tens of millions of dollars, and then you hope that you get quality product in return at the timeline that you think. But if you don't, your options are go to China and sue, which is never going to happen. So it is completely trust-based at the end of the day.
And even that actually has come a long way. So you used to have to pay 100% upfront.
Well, I did that.
Yeah.
I've outside of my recent, I told you this morning, I bought some S19s of Compass just to have my little contribution to mining. But back in 2017, I thought I was going to be a miner. And I completely fucked it up. But I bought 70 S9s from Bitmain, and I had to convert my Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash to buy it, and then make the transfer. You hope they receive it, and I had to wait months for my ASICs.
Why Bitcoin Cash?
That's all they would accept at the time because they were trying to push Bitcoin Cash. You remember that?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it has changed slightly, but it does go back to how like chips are made. So Bitmain and MicroBT, they have to upfront pay at the foundry, and then also every node that they make is a lot of R&D development. So it costs a lot of money for them to create the new machines. So at the beginning, I kind of got it, but now it seems like it should be changing, right? Like contracts should be changing. There should be a little bit more reliability. So I'd love to see like that shift. And I'm actually pretty bullish on Blockstream's news with Sponduli acquisition, and hopefully that will help the ASIC market and bring some maturity to it. But it's not, the ASIC supply chain is like a challenging beast for miners for sure.
Yeah, and the contract terms also make it really, really difficult to get traditional forms of financing against the mining infrastructure. Like if you're buying enterprise grade tech, you can always get very low interest financing applied to it. But because of the terms involved here, we end up having to pay a lot more if we want traditional financing options on the equipment.
I also finance miners, right? So like at Galaxy, we mine on our own and then we do miner finance. And even for me, it's really difficult to get comfortable with terms of a contract. So I wait either until the machine comes in or I provide machines for financing, because otherwise you don't know like what the terms of the contract are going to look like and when the machines will come. And you're relying on that Bitcoin that they mine to pay you back.
There are two main ASIC suppliers, right? Is it Bitmain and Watts Miner?
MicroBT.
MicroBT.
Yeah.
Do they make the Watts Miner?
Yes.
They do.
Yeah. What other ASIC manufacturers are there?
So there's Canaan, there's Innosilicon, there's a couple new ones like Minerva, and I think that's pretty much it.
Are they all based out of China though? Apart from the
Yeah, so MicroBT and Bitmain are based out of China, but they've now moved and created more facilities outside of China, which as a U.S. miner, it's actually really great because you're slapped with a 28% like sales tax when you transfer machines from China to the U.S. So that was like the Trump tax that came out a while back.
Trump, you dick.
So
so basically all miners are 30% more expensive now because of that.
Well, the great news is that MicroBT and Bitmain have facilities outside of China now.
Oh, they
so
do,
if they're
right.
manufactured outside of China, the tax doesn't apply.
Okay.
And in Canada, we don't have the Trump tax.
How much of the market do they have between them?
Like well over 80%, I'd say.
For sure, the lion's share. Bitmain is the dominant player, and then MicroBT would be second.
So it's essentially a duopoly. And
Yeah, but even that, so Bitmain uses TSMC and MicroBT uses Samsung. So it comes down to like space at the foundry. So TSMC has more capacity, and they also, I was shocked last year when TSMC came out and said they had the 5 nanometer node coming, and Bitmain was actually one of like a handful of clients that got space on that node. Now it's probably really small of space compared to like Apple, but it still is pretty cool for Bitcoin mining. Now on the opposite end, MicroBT uses Samsung, which creates its own products. So Samsung is always going to create their products before they give space to an external client. So they have a little bit less market share, I'd say, than Bitmain.
is there a supply issue now with ASICs?
It's hard to say. So there's a ton of volume expected in 2022, but the reality of what will actually ship is hard to say.
So we study and really look at all the public mining companies because that allows us to have insight into the future network hash rate. And according to public company announcements, we're expecting 414 petahashes to come online over the next year.
What does that mean in peak
It's
language?
massive. It's like massive amounts of money and capital and ASICs being produced.
Exahash.
Exahash, yeah, shit. 414 exahash, 141 exahash, yeah, not
Okay.
petahash.
I still don't know what that
141.
means. How many ASICs is that?
It's a lot of ASICs.
What is that?
Oh yeah, unit quantity. It's hard.
Is
Because
that
it's-
doubling the capacity?
It's double.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially double current network hash
So it's
rate.
going to halve your profitability unless we double in
That's
price.
just the publics.
Okay.
That doesn't include any.
And there's
private
some
demand.
massive private companies, like massive private companies.
In fact, the largest miners are private.
Core Scientific, one of them.
Core is coming to market through a public SPAC. They're
Okay.
included in the 141.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who are the private ones? Do we know? Or can we say it? Is it a secret?
I don't know.
Like Atlas is a huge
Okay.
private miner. They were based out of China and now moving over. So they've announced deals with Core and Compute North, both 200 megawatt facilities in total that we know that is coming online in the US.
But if these all come online, a lot of the older machines that are still hashing right now, the S9s will start to go offline, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think because they won't be as profitable unless their cost of electricity is super low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's a massive increase in supply. We're going to need Michael Saylor to buy a lot more Bitcoin.
Luckily, he bought more this morning.
It's not enough.
He's consistent.
The interesting part, though, is like, when will they get delivered? Right? So that's the inconsistency that we just don't know.
And we're not sure exact quantities of foundry allocation to ASICs, period. There's estimates, but we don't know exactly how much they're really getting. And we don't know if they know yet.
That's like the holy grail.
Yeah.
Do you think it's down to their own operations being a bit sketchy, or is it just the chip shortage at the moment and themselves? Chip shortage.
Yeah.
And are you guys having to consider into your plans, like in your risk analysis, potential of China maybe dropping a few little bombs on Taiwan? Do you have to like think about this?
We think about all risks. That's probably not one that keeps me up at night.
Keeps me up at night.
I've definitely thought of that before. I think that there's like larger issues, though. Like, I like to think that like I wouldn't just be thinking about like how much Bitcoin I mine if that happened, but it is something that should be considered, right? Like, it's scary.
Yeah. So what's being done here in the US? Are foundries being built here?
Yes, but a new foundry takes 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Why does it take so long?
There's only 2 companies that make machines for like that create the nodes for the foundries.
Okay.
So it's just like supply chain all the way down to like machine creation.
Okay. What do we know about what Blockstream's doing then?
Just what they announced publicly, Peter.
I'm not in the mining space.
So Blockstream acquired Sponduli. Sponduli's was an Israeli-based company that created Bitcoin miners back, I think, in like 2016 timeframe. But I think they're trying to create their own ASIC, which I think would be great. And Square also recently announced that they're looking into creating some type of ASIC machine for miners.
But the time it would take them to be able to make a dent within that market
It's
would be
gonna
challenging.
Yeah, I mean, Bitmain and MicroBT definitely have like a very long head start.
And there'll be some test and learn in creating their own ASICs, right? Because I remember when I bought some Dragon Mints as well. They were a piece of shit. But 70 of those, complete waste of money. But you know, it's going to take some time for them to like get up to speed or even become competitive. So it feels like Bitmain and MicroBT have got a real stranglehold on the market.
Certainly they do now. It will be interesting to see if large tech starts to get interested in this space. That could be a game changer for sure.
Such as someone like Samsung.
Samsung, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA.
Is that a prediction or a hope?
I think it's an inevitability that large tech will come into this space. Increasing recognition that digital assets are here to stay will necessitate that.
Bitcoin, Jamie. Bitcoin is here to stay.
I'm not a maxi. You know that, Peter.
I'm here.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
here.
Okay.
With my raspy voice.
We're all still friends.
We've got a table between us.
We don't.
I mean, that would be super interesting. What is the size of the market in terms of ASICs? Do we know like annual revenue for manufacturing?
We don't know any of that.
We think it's billions, though.
It probably is. I think the closest that we get to understanding it is tracking public mining companies. We didn't have that like 2-3 years ago, right? There was only a few, and now there's more. So it allows us more insight into understanding like how big Bitmain and MicroBT are, because public mining companies announce a few things, right, that help them with their stock price. They announce their current hash rate, their future hash rate, when they buy machines, how many machines they buy, and the cost that it costs them to mine a Bitcoin. So I think because of everyone is like aligning around those metrics, we're now able to see more into like the other side of things that we don't know, like understanding how much Bitcoin ASICs are created would be like literally the holy grail. And I thought we were going to get there. There were rumors that like Bitmain and MicroBT might IPO, which would require them to provide information. But I think because they're just like killing it, they don't have to. Like they don't need capital.
And we also don't know if or how much they're self-mining.
That's a good point too.
That it could be really any amount.
Are they definitely self-mining? Do we know they are?
We don't know.
We don't know. What a mysterious industry.
I mean, we know that Bitmain at least used to a lot. There was always like coupons that were dropped right before they put out like a new machine. And like I saw machines that came in that were like new, but like were like stepped on and like had like weird hash boards, and it was weird. So I don't know if they still do, but there's been, you know, rumors of it in the past.
So they were selling off their gear as new that they'd been using. Cheeky. Can you guys say how much you guys spent on ASICs if you're public companies?
Every time we order, we publish what we paid for the basically per terahash.
Right.
Yeah. So our last 2 orders were around $50 a terahash.
I have no idea what that equates to in terms of how much you've spent on.
It depends on the machine. So machines have a certain amount of output of terahash, and you get billed based on that, which is also kind of an interesting fact. Like you don't get your final bill until they do a final run of the machine, and they see like how much on average that machine works for. So that's also something that like I think is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. It's not like we're buying units of machines. We're buying hash rate, terahash, and then ultimately the mix that gets delivered will get you to that terahash, but not necessarily in uniform machine types.
And do you have to retest yourself when they come in?
Well, you plug them in. You're not necessarily testing them. You test them when you power them up.
Do you always get the hash rate that they promise?
There's like a plus or minus 5%
Okay.
that they give you. But it's actually kind of funny because like say if you have a machine that is supposed to be like 100 terahash, right? Let's just throw that number out there. And then they'll sell you a machine that's like 102 terahash for like a little bit more, even though it's between that like plus or minus 5%. It's kind of an interesting dynamic
They
when
take
you're
the
buying
upside.
machines. Yeah, you have to have buffer when you're purchasing machines, both on terms of like building and then also for capital.
What a weird industry this is.
It is. This year, we've actually become an authorized repair center for MicroBT as well.
Okay.
So we're now repairing most of MicroBT equipment for miners across North America and Northern Europe. So this has given us a really interesting kind of window more deeply into the supply chain because we're now a parts depot as well. And obviously, it's an incremental revenue line for us, which puts us closer strategically within the supply chain.
What is the benefit to these companies going public? Explain that to me as somebody I'm not a guy who runs businesses. I mean,
The ASIC manufacturers going public or miners going public?
Miners going public. Why have we seen so many? Because outside of the miners, what is it? We have Coinbase. Do we have any others?
Galaxy.
Galaxy. Well, of course, yeah.
Voyager Digital.
Yeah. But why are so many miners going public?
Access to capital. Because our access to capital outside of public markets is very expensive and difficult to come by at quantum. And it's all about capital. You need capital at scale to buy equipment at scale and to get better pricing. And then, of course, your power costs are very, very high. So it is an incredibly capital-intensive business, and being public is your best way to access the lowest cost of capital available for this industry.
I'd also say that's especially if you want to like hold your Bitcoin, right? So like if you want to hold your Bitcoin long term, you need access to capital because you don't want to spend the Bitcoin that you're mining beyond like your operational cost.
Which is a relatively new phenomenon. So Hut 8's always held Bitcoin on balance sheet, but historically we were the only public miner to do so. And we had to spend a long time explaining why we had taken that strategy because most miners would sell everything until this year. It's really only been this calendar year that all public miners essentially started to hold almost all of their output, which is interesting in how it affects the supply signal. Because miners used to be the source of incremental liquidity of Bitcoin into the system, but now that so many miners are holding, it is restricting supply.
Well, Plan B's stock to flow model is based on the assumption that there's 900 Bitcoin a day that comes to the market.
That's right.
But if the miners aren't selling,
Right.
the stock to flow is different.
Right.
I would also say there's like more companies that will give debt to miners now than like 4 years ago, right?
For sure, but it's not cheap debt.
Not cheap. It's hard to understand it from an investor perspective. You're like, hey, I have these machines coming in, don't know the final price. We'll let you know in 7 months.
And
Like,
then they
it's hard.
want to see the contract, and you give them the contract, and they're like, oh, no.
And they're like, what's hash rate going to be? And you're like, well, it could be anywhere between this and this. We're not sure. What's Bitcoin price going to be? And you're like, it can be between these ranges. So it's sometimes difficult to get investors comfortable, which means that you pay a higher cost for debt.
Are you still holding all of the Bitcoin you mine, Jamie?
I have not sold a Bitcoin since the first week of January. Yeah.
It's the first week of January.
Yeah.
And is this something that you just review on a monthly basis, constant basis?
We're always considering our treasury management, and we definitely take feedback from our investors as well. And right now, the investor sentiment is very much in favor of holding all Bitcoin.
It's similar for you.
We hold right now. Yep. I think treasury management will be a key differentiator for public mining companies going forward. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that you can do with the Bitcoin that you hold. And I feel like that will be something that if people get their head wrapped around certain situations that can be created for them, that they'll be better longer term.
Yeah, as an example, 1,000 of our Bitcoin we have in a yield account with Galaxy, and we also have a revolver that's wrapped around that. And this is a product that is only become available to us this year. But it means we're actually now able to generate fiat from the Bitcoin while it sits with a secure counterparty.
Interesting. And you borrow, but you can borrow against the Bitcoin.
Yeah, during the bear market, when it was really difficult for miners to raise capital, we used the Bitcoin on our balance sheet as collateral to get a loan.
Because it feels like there's more people coming into the market who are willing to loan against Bitcoin. I think I read this week Goldman Sachs are even considering it.
Yes.
I think that's like one of my favorite things of like where I sit. So like we prop mine, so we mine for ourselves at Galaxy, and then because of that, I'm able to see like what are the like products that I would want to create, and I can create products for my friends like Jaime in the space that like help them with their treasury management strategy. So that's been a lot of the focus that I've been working on over the past year.
It's such a weird, fascinating industry. I still struggle to get my head around it. I don't know how you do. I mean, for you, Jaime, it must be such a different world from a year ago when you came into this.
Yeah. When I came in, I did not sleep for the first 6 weeks. I called a panic dialed Amanda like every second day. It is a big, big curve to come from traditional tech to this space and figure out how to, make it all work. And obviously we're really, really focused on managing the balance sheet and creating value for shareholders. That's my job. And how to manage risk in all of this with all of the opaqueness that is involved in the industry. It's very, very complex.
You won't go back though.
Never.
It's so much more fun.
It is so fun. And I've stopped sleeping. Like I literally just have naps because your brain can't shut off for any extended period of time. There's so much to do. There's so much to think through. And the kind of energy that comes from that, there's nothing like it.
I woke up at 4:00 this morning and I was annoyed it wasn't 6, which is like my usual get up time. So I just got up, started working.
Just start working.
I could be shattered later. But
you won't though.
I probably will be.
Oh, you're weak, Peter.
I like to sleep. I'm not gonna lie. I really like sleep, but I also like Bitcoin mining, so I'm up a lot.
Well, listen, look, it's good you're in, Jaime. I'm glad you're not sleeping and enjoying and working around the clock on this. One of the things that I keep thinking about is that back in 2017 when I had my disastrous effort at mining, when I essentially bought 140 ASICs, 70 S9s and 70 Dragon Mints, and I bought them. They were delivered in December. Had a really great first month, okay second month, break even third month. Then I got screwed for months on end because I didn't know what I was doing. But really, the point I'm trying to get to is that this market can go up and down, and there's been a huge investment in Bitcoin mining, especially here in the US, right? With the migration out of China. And it feels like this investment at the moment is unrelenting. But at the same time, the price has been pretty much, the price is actually, I think it's below February. I think we were higher in February. We don't know where this is going. We don't know if we're going to go up to 100,000. We don't know if we're going to drop back down to 40, 30,000. How the hell do you start planning for that? Because you can be cautious, but your competitors could be investing and building new infrastructure and you can be behind them, or you could be adventurous. And if the price goes up, great. But if it drops, you're left with all this infrastructure that you don't need. How the fuck do you plan this?
I think we all have different strategies.
This is why you don't sleep.
This is why I don't sleep. And not all miners have the same strategy, for sure. And I think that's the beauty of choice for investors. You can kind of figure out which miner strategy makes more sense to you and you have more comfort with. We have a more diversified strategy. So we have multiple lines of revenue. We're not just pure play on Bitcoin mining. We also mine other digital assets to give us
shitcoins.
Well, we mine other digital assets, but we only get paid in Bitcoin directly out of the pool. So it's all about really reducing our risk on compression of Bitcoin mining economics by being able to mine alternate blockchains that have different margin profiles, but still getting paid in Bitcoin and still stacking Bitcoin at the end of the day on balance sheet.
So what other shitcoins do you mine?
So we own the only other asset that we mine is Ethereum. I will not say shitcoin. So we mine Ethereum. We mine Ethereum with Luxor's mining pool, which allows us to mine Ethereum but get paid in Bitcoin directly out of the pool.
Okay. So it's just Ethereum.
It's just Ethereum, and doing this strategy allows us to mine a Bitcoin for less than $3,000 Canadian.
Wow. I use the Luxor mining pool, and I'm okay with Luxor.
Great
but I
pool.
only mine Bitcoin. If you just said
I don't judge.
If you just said BSV, we would have had a problem.
I did not, and I do not.
Good. You guys mine other stuff.
I know we mine Bitcoin.
Yes. Well, we love you, Amanda. Okay. Another thing I really want to talk about is that there has been a lot of pressure on the mining industry with the ESG people. And I'm not going to pick a side because I am somebody who believes global warming is an issue and it's happening. I'm not a denier. I believe it's caused by humans. I don't know the solution. I think governments will fuck it up if they try. But whatever it is still a lens on the industry. How do you feel progress? What do you feel about the progress that's been made on moving Bitcoin mining to be more from sustainable sources?
So I think that's going to naturally happen because miners need the lowest cost of electricity. So hopefully over time, sustainable sources will be the lowest cost of electricity. I think the industry as a whole has come together. Like Jamie and I know this is a contentious topic for some, but we're founding members of the Bitcoin Mining Council.
Yep.
We saw early on, like starting to talk to investors in like January of last year, that the ESG angle was like really big for them to check off to get comfortable with it. And behind the scenes, we know that most miners are trying to go and have the lowest cost of electricity, which is sustainable. So we decided to come together as an industry, even though we're all competitors with each other, and say like, let's just share our data, and hopefully that will like dispel some of the FUD. It's really hard to dispel FUD in mainstream media when we have no data to back it up. So I've been pretty excited about the data that we've put out over the past year. I think hopefully it's helped. I've seen it help in investor conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been the noise and the fervor around it has certainly died down since we brought the data out and started basically sharing a collective narrative based on facts.
I'm not anti-mining council. First, I had my suspicious concerns, like everybody, because these centralized organizations never really work out well for Bitcoin. But it doesn't actually seem to have been an issue with the Bitcoin Mining Council, and actually, it seems to have just produced really good data.
Yeah.
So I accept it's a good thing, and I congratulate the people on working hard on that. But do you feel a collective pressure to source from more renewable sources, or as a business, will you just always buy the cheapest source?
No, there's definitely pressure. Our original sites are in Alberta, so our two sites are in Alberta, which is traditionally fossil fuel based grid, but Alberta is doing a ton of work to bring renewables into the grid mix, and they've got a goal. They're at 20% renewables on grid now, with a goal to get up to 30% within the next 5 years, and they're on track to do that. Texas is doing the same type of investment in renewables on their grid. And the nice thing about miners is we're a stable off-taker. Like we really do work in conjunction with the grid. My best example is our primary site is the city of Medicine Hat. They're an independent
Medicine Hat.
Yeah, they're an independent power authority within the province of Alberta because they have so much natural gas. But a lot of that energy was sitting idle for peak demand. So we came in, we monetized that energy that was just sitting there idle. We're now the second largest contributor of revenue directly to the city. And when the city needs the power, we shut down and give it back. So we've made a completely efficient system. We haven't taken energy, we haven't created new energy. We've just monetized what was there for peak.
Yeah. Also, I think sometimes I feel it's a bit unfair if you're taking power out of the grid, then that's down to the grid for how they source the power. You're just a buyer like any other business. It's very different from, say, I don't know, spinning up an old coal mine just to mine Bitcoin. I think you have a lot more responsibility when you are directly creating the power from from dirty sources. But when you're buying from the grid, it's a little bit unfair just to pick on one industry.
It's complex for sure. And in Canada, we have a carbon tax. So we as miners using fossil fuels, we pay a carbon tax that goes towards building more renewables into the grid. So we are part of the solution through our tax base and through our workload. But then we also announced yesterday that we will be carbon neutral by 2025, which means not only will we be paying the carbon tax, but we'll also be buying offsets as well.
Carbon neutral. Your move, Amanda.
I think that like Bitcoin just gets picked on. It's like the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing to pick on. You're like, oh, it uses energy. But like everything in this world uses energy. So it's a tough conversation to have because like we all use energy in everything that we do in life. And energy is going to continue to be needed for all the things that we do as a civilization, right? I think miners will have their own strategies that work for like what works for their company, what works for their, philosophy, what works for like their investors. And we'll see that play out over time. And, we'll see who wins.
But this stabilizing the grid is just an unbelievable phenomenon from Bitcoin mining. It feels like it's only something that's been talked about for maybe the last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's suddenly, it's a great defense for Bitcoin in that if you want to shut down Bitcoin, you're going to take away jobs and you're going to take away something that's stabilizing the grid. I met with Governor Abbott in Texas, and he was talking about their energy, because they've got their own energy grid. Is it Urquhart? Yeah, he was talking about that Bitcoin mining will help them stabilize their own grid.
Yep.
So that's going to provide, hopefully, some regulatory protection.
Yeah, and I think that there's also like off-grid miners that use, behind the meter mining. So like Greenwich, for example, was one in upstate New York, and they got a lot of slack for, New York State kind of gave them a lot of trouble. But at the end of the day, like mining is going to continue to happen, and miners are like very savvy in finding energy sources, and the ability to turn on and off like on demand will give miners more flexibility than traditional, industries. The other thing that is like never talked about is like we talk about like Amazon and Facebook data centers, and they're built very differently, which requires like redundancy and air conditioning and like more expensive builds. And that's just like we just let that be, and we like just shit on Bitcoin mining for their energy usage. And it's just, I don't know, the topic. I feel like I hope we've changed the narrative a little bit this year, and hope to see it like change in the future too, because I think more people are becoming more, interesting ways of using energy.
So a Facebook boiling polar bears?
Yeah.
Of course.
They are. Well,
Maybe not boiling polar bears.
you know what I mean.
But to Amanda's point, all of our facilities use free air cooling. We don't pay any CapEx or OpEx or use any energy to cool. We literally have louvers. We're in cold climates, and Mother Nature does the work.
What are those? I've seen some people there putting their miners in like liquid.
Immersion cooling.
What the hell is that, and why are these things not blowing up?
You can overclock your machines. You can get more like, hash rate out of the machines, and it also helps in climates where it's humid for your machine to operate appropriately.
But how do they not blow
last
up?
long enough?
It's specialized. It's
Okay.
dielectric fluid. So like BitCool, for example, is one of them that's made specifically for Bitcoin miners.
Wow, fascinating. So in terms, another thing, by the way, that isn't mentioned, because I've brought this up a few times, because Dan Moorhead wrote a really excellent piece saying we keep talking about the E with Bitcoin mining, but we never talk about the S and the G.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's something we can be pushing back on to
Yeah.
say, like, hold up a second, Democrats, let's look at the S and the G.
Yeah, so when we published our yesterday our commitments to ESG, we published commitments in all three letters, and I think that is very important. Right now, we're all focused on the E, but there's a much bigger narrative that requires time and attention, and so that's how we tackled it this week, where all of our metrics are public, they're auditable, and we hold ourselves accountable to them, not just the energy side.
Is there anything more transparent than Bitcoin miners?
I don't think so.
Definitely not the ASIC manufacturing companies.
Well, yeah. We're talking about the actual miners. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the S and the G side of things needs pushing a bit more, especially as was it yesterday that person from Stellar was shouting the energy FUD with regards to like literally dumping on Bitcoin in front of Congress. I didn't see the hearing, but
I didn't see it.
so we're not only are we fighting the regulators, but we're fighting the shitcoiners who are attacking Bitcoin to promote their shitcoins, which I find particularly annoying. I'm looking more towards you here, Amanda.
Yeah, so, interesting dynamic for me. I work for Galaxy. We do a lot of different things with different coins. My team focuses on Bitcoin mining. The part that kind of drives me crazy is when like the infrastructure bill came out and all of a sudden we want it to be one industry. And then a week later, it's like proof of stake is the way, right? And proof of work uses too much energy. So it seems like there's sometimes a divide in the industry when it's convenient, and then also like a unification in the industry when it's also convenient.
What do you think about proof of stake? It's good for getting Bitcoin. I'm sorry, I'm being mean.
I think proof of stake favors the holder, which requires capital. I think it's more centralized, and I think it discriminates from open participation.
What's the regulatory situation like in Canada? How does it compare to, say, the US?
It's not a hot topic in Canada right now.
Okay.
So we don't have the action that we're seeing come out of the SEC.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the US then, because I think it's super interesting. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that there seem to be more and more people within Congress who are actually batting for Bitcoin and trying to defend it.
Yeah.
I mentioned this morning Ted Budd.
I didn't watch yesterday, so
somebody put it up on Twitter. Ted Budd came out and was in defense and saying, why would we overregulate this and push this into other countries? And I feel like, I don't know the numbers, but the majority of Bitcoin companies are here in the US, the large ones. And I would estimate proportionally, as I said to you earlier, I think proportionally Americans may own a lot more Bitcoin than the rest of the world. So it would be a China-style own goal for them to ban Bitcoin, and actually they should embrace it. And at a time of currency wars, when China's pushing its CBDC, I think Bitcoin is a very American idea and great for America.
I think Bitcoin's great for everywhere. I love the narrative of Bitcoin, being great for places that don't have the amount of wealth and capital that we have in America. I think it's also great for me. I'm an American, right? So I see value in it for multiple reasons. It's obviously multi-layered. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. There's a lot of innovation in Bitcoin companies happening within the States. And it would be really sad to see them shut it down.
And even global, again, it's a race for capital and access to capital. And the most liquid capital market on the planet is the U.S. market.
Interesting. So talk to me about your capital raising strategies then. What are the different ones you use?
So we originally were only traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We dual listed on the NASDAQ in June to specifically get access to the U.S. market and U.S. liquidity. And our capital raising strategy has evolved significantly as the shareholder base has started to evolve. So miners used to be heavily dependent on retail investors and hedge funds. And we would generally only see unit deals done because hedge funds are looking for a warrant to play in riskier spaces like this one. But the last capital raise that we did in September was the first of quantum that wasn't a unit deal. It was common only. We raised 172.5 USD, and it, for the first time, brought more long traditional institutions. And so we're seeing a very significant shift in a short period of time as far as the investor base coming into the world of mining.
Have you considered doing anything like MicroStrategy and raising capital just to buy Bitcoin and put it on the balance sheet?
So all of the Bitcoin on our balance sheet is self-mined, and that's what we're comfortable with.
And your cost to mine is cheaper than what you can buy Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
With,
so. But did a Marathon announce they were going to buy?
They've bought a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you think could you even speculate why they would do that?
Well, they're a newer mining entity, so they wanted Bitcoin on balance sheet, and they didn't have much hashing to mine themselves, and they were able to access the capital markets and raise significant amounts of capital, so they put it to work in both ways.
Whole industry is crazy. All right, let's talk about the future of mining. What is there to look forward to? What are you both individually and collectively thinking about? What's on your minds?
Okay, this is going to be controversial because
this
is
what we're here for.
I'm very much down the rabbit hole right now on Web3 and the metaverse and how we as a diversified mining company can start to think about how we can play in this ecosystem, but as a continued infrastructure participant. So I think, and then also because we have Bitcoin on balance sheet and we are thinking we're making yield, starting to make yield on that, and thinking about a long-term view of how we continue to expand our treasury management strategy and how that balance sheet works for us and could potentially participate in this like next massive wave of innovation that's going to come in the world of 3.0. So yeah, that's what I'm super excited about, down the rabbit hole on. And it's not a pure Bitcoin play, but Bitcoin has made this all possible.
Interesting. I'm not a big fan of Web3 as it's been redefined.
Well, how do you see it being redefined?
Web3, prior to any of this blockchain industry coming out, Web3 was about a decentralized web and owning data. Mm-hmm. I feel like Chris Dixon and A16Z have, and some of the other people in Silicon Valley have redefined the narrative to be based on protocols that require tokens to run Web3, which I think is a distraction to the things that we really need, which is privacy and protection of data and Bitcoin, which I think are there's an incentive for them to push these protocols, I believe, because they get to see massive returns for limited investment with limited risk. And I think that's why they've redefined Web3 as a world of tokens and NFTs rather than a world of what actually users need, which is, I think, the next, with all the hacks we've had and all the data hacks, I think we need privacy and protection of data. And I think that comes from decentralization. And prior to Bitcoin, people were able to decentralize things without a token. I mean, BitTorrent was done without a token and it decentralized file sharing. Napster was able to be closed down eventually, but it still decentralized file sharing. And I just feel the token narrative is misleading, and I think it places an onerous task of people who want to use the web on understanding very complex things that they might lose money on. That's my issue with it.
But that's not the way that it needs to play out.
It's the way it is being played out right now. It's becoming a meme in some ways.
But it doesn't have to be.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not. I hope Web3 isn't really Web A16Z, because that's what it feels like to me.
Interesting.
And I know a lot of the web infrastructure grew and a lot of the companies and products grew because of companies like that investing in it. But I also feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done which doesn't require tokens, which is improving the web infrastructure for users, what the users need, not what VCs want to sell. And I think that narrative being redefined for me is mildly concerning.
I am still very much in the camp of Web3 is putting the user in control of their data.
We're good then.
Yeah. It's so exciting when you think about a world where that's true.
Well, it is, and that's why I think Metaverse Wars, which is coming, we've got the centralized Facebook metaverse from Zuck versus the decentralized metaverse from Cameron and Tyler, which is going to be the epic tech battle of the next decade, which I cannot fucking wait to just watch play out. And
it's so exciting.
It's like, was it Jaws 2, Revenge of Jaws? This is like the revenge movie now. Mm-hmm. This is where they get to fucking stomp on Zuck and say, we're right because we went decentralized and nobody trusts you and your bullshit, Zuck. Sorry, I'm just getting a bit passionate now.
No, I think we are in such interesting times.
You're going to plug into the metaverse?
Plug in?
Yeah, you're going to get, what do you want to do in the metaverse?
I went so far down the rabbit hole. I was shopping for real estate the other day in the metaverse.
Really?
I pulled myself back from it, but it just the ability to really dream about a decentralized world, a digital world where you control yourself, your person in that environment. I think it's fascinating. I think it's too early to say how it's going to play out and who the winners and the losers are, but it's an incredible opportunity to really imagine a different web world.
Are you going to be a Web3 realtor? Realtor? You say realtor. I'm trying to use your language. We call them estate agents.
Real estate agent
Yeah.
or realtor. No, definitely not.
You're just buying for yourself.
Well, I don't know. I'm just dreaming. I'm dreaming and imagining of how this could all move. Like Barbados has announced a digital embassy.
It has?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
They're setting up an embassy in the metaverse.
Really?
Yeah.
Which metaverse though?
I don't know where they bought the real estate. Do you remember?
Is it in Zarks?
No. Decentral.
So we're gonna have the multi-metaverse.
Potentially.
What are you gonna do in the metaverse?
No.
You're not. You just know.
I focus my time on Bitcoin mining. I think there's so much that can be done there. I find that fascinating. Like, I think that there's a lot that's going to happen over the next year in mining, and like that's where I want to focus all of my time.
100%. Well, you tell me about the future of mining then.
I think there will
What's like on your mind?
Yeah, so I think, like I said earlier, I think treasury management strategies will become really interesting next year. I think hash rate growth will become interesting. We'll see, who actually delivers on what they said they're going to do, which is like what I track very closely. I also think we're going to see some M&A in mining. I think it's inevitable.
Huh.
It's ripe for consolidation with as much activity as we're seeing.
Yeah, so we were talking about this morning when we grabbed a coffee, and I was trying to understand where are the efficiencies in mining? Is it purchasing power?
Purchasing power is huge, but I also think operations is huge right now. So you need to have someone that knows how to operate a mining site and knows how to scale in order to get, to the scale that you want to be at. And I think that that's like something that is pretty lacking in the space.
Do you think Bitcoin mining is decentralized enough? Because we saw the shutdown in China. I saw this incredible chart in Ryan Selkis's report. Did you see his report?
I did, yeah.
The chart where just China switched off and the distribution of mining. A lot of this has moved to the US. Are we decentralized enough? Should we be? Do you, as companies, think about putting operations in other countries?
Yeah, I mean, we look everywhere. We look, for the cheapest energy that exists. I think it's decentralized enough. I think one of the really cool things that popped up this year was really like at-home mining or individuals mining Bitcoin. I think that that's been something that I've loved to watch happen. So one person that I like absolutely love on Twitter is Econ Alchemist. He does like at-home mining videos and like we'll do like at-home consulting for people that want to mine. I think Steve's Black Box is an incredible feature. And, even if it's like one machine at people's houses, it's awesome. Steve from Upstream Data.
Steve
Barber.
Yeah.
Good friend.
What's his black box?
It's an individual, like, it's like a box, a black box, that it's set up for you to have at-home mining, and you could put it like outside your house. And he like created it so that like the noise isn't as bad because mining noise is kind of an issue. I've also seen videos pop up of people like heating their homes with miners, which is pretty fascinating.
So can it be profitable to mine at home? I always thought the power is too expensive.
Power is super expensive. I think it depends on your like ideology. So if you think that like Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot more in the future, like maybe you're willing to lose dollars now because you're holding your Bitcoin. So it just comes down to like what you're comfortable with. You might also just want to be part of, mining Bitcoin. I talked to some guy at a BitDevs meetup recently who made me think twice. He was like, I mine Bitcoin at home, not because it's profitable, because I want non-KYC Bitcoin.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty fascinating too. So I think people have different reasons for it, but it's cool to see it pop up as like a trend.
And then it's helpful to have a company like Compass, like obviously sponsor, but
Yes.
they're making it easy for anyone to be able to purchase ASICs.
Yeah, we, full disclosure, we led the round in Compass' seed round. And I think what they've created has been really awesome for individuals to become part of mining. And Compass is for like individuals, but there's also people that like come to us and they're like, hey, I have a bunch of money I want to put into Bitcoin mining. I don't know where to get started. And so they're able to, also serve a different clientele too. So, I think what they're doing is great. I think, there's been some delays on sites that people have been upset about, but that truly is the unsexy part of mining. Like the building part of it is like really hard. So I know they've tried to, make their customers really happy, and we've been, working really hard behind the scenes on getting people up and running. But, mining is difficult. It's physical infrastructure, and it's not everything goes according to plan.
Certainly not in our current COVID-constrained supply chain, logistical nightmare environment. Like, we are battling every single day supply chains and logistics.
I'll give an example of that. So we use a really great shipping and logistics company. At the beginning of the year, I was budgeting like $150 per ASIC to ship over. We paid $500 per ASIC last month.
Holy shit.
Everything's coming on chartered planes.
Yeah, interesting, because I've just ordered a bunch of football shirts, and normally they would be manufactured in China, but they're manufacturing them now in Turkey because they can come by lorry. So it's more expensive, but you've got it. What they said is you've got a guaranteed delivery date. I can tell you it's 80 days. I don't have to tell you, well, it could be 60, but it could be 140, and I don't know the price of shipping, so I can't give you a price now.
I would love guaranteed delivery dates on like literally anything.
I don't even know how it's possible. Like, we have, because climate change kind of piles on too, and where it's hurt us in the last month, all of our equipment normally lands in Vancouver, and then it trucks to our site in Alberta, but Vancouver has had massive flooding, which has shut down all of the roadways around the city. So the only way you can get things out of Vancouver is to fly them out. There have been no inland roads. They've all flooded out 3 times now.
Is this unusual for Vancouver?
Incredibly unusual. Yeah, so just when you think you've got it figured out, some other new crazy unforeseen thing happens and you're jammed again. It is an absolute juggernaut right now.
I think that's like my favorite part about it though, is like you're always like figuring out something new. Like
she's a masochist.
Yeah, what's happening? We've just had aliens land and attack our center.
You never ever know, but it's so that everything's exponentially more complicated right now.
Oh, well. Listen, I think you're both doing brilliant jobs, and I love you both.
Oh.
And I'm sorry I gave you a hard time, Jamie.
It's okay, Peter.
But we're a Bitcoin
healthy
show.
debate.
We're a Bitcoin show, and we've got to shit on the shitcoins. Jamie, tell people where to follow you and the amazing work Hut 8 are doing.
I'm at Jaime Leverton on Twitter. I think I'm one of the only Levertons on LinkedIn, and we're hut8mining.com.
Oh, I'm Amanda.
Sorry, I should have said. Also, you, Amanda. I just nodded at you.
Look at it, Amanda.
I'm on Twitter too, at Amanda_Fabiano, and we have like a Galaxy website, so you can go on.
What
there
is
if you
it?
need more. GalaxyDigital.io. We don't really have much on mining there, but we do have a 12-week course if you want to learn about mining that we put on this summer.
Are you going to that mining conference in Texas at the end of February? Scott Offord, I think, is running it.
No, I'm not going to that, but we might have we have people from our team at all kinds of events.
I might be going to that one.
Very nice.
Austin, do you want to come say hello? You want to say hello to the camera, just as you came in? Any side. Just come around and say hello.
It's been good to listen to what you guys have been talking about. Hey.
Anything you want to add? Any closing thoughts before we close down the show? Any Bitcoin mining closing thoughts?
No, nothing in short form.
But there we go.
I think they covered it well. Yeah.
They crushed it. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks,
Keep
Peter.
crushing. Bye.
Bye.